Welcome to the interview segment on Lens on Africa, where voices rise and stories inspire. Today we turn our attention to one of nature's most powerful gifts, breastfeeding, especially as this week is World Breastfeeding Week. Breastfeeding is a life-giving bond between mother and child, but beyond the personal bond, breastfeeding carries broader benefits for families, communities, and even public health systems across Africa and the world. And yet, despite its importance, many myths, cultural perceptions, and modern pressures continue to affect how breastfeeding is understood and practiced. We'll get into the conversation in a moment. Please stay tuned.
Breastfeeding stands as the cornerstone of infant survival and long-term health, particularly in Africa, where malnutrition and infectious diseases contribute to high child mortality rates. Exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months provides critical antibodies, nutrients, and bioactive compounds that protect against diarrhea, respiratory infections, and chronic conditions like obesity and diabetes. Globally, scaling up exclusive breastfeeding could save over 820,000 children annually, 20,000 in low-resource settings, and reduce infant mortality by 13%. In Africa, where under 5 mortality remains the world's highest, accounting for 55 to 75% of preventable deaths, breastfeeding also offers economic benefits by curbing healthcare costs and boosting productivity, potentially reclaiming 6% of GDP lost to malnutrition-related burdens. Despite these advantages, exclusive breastfeeding rates across the continent average only 49%, with stark regional disparities: 83% in Burundi, 19% in Gabon, and 34% in Côte d'Ivoire. Sociocultural, economic, and structural barriers hinder progress. Culturally, misconceptions about colostrum being dirty or harmful lead to discarding this vital immune-boosting substance, while pre-lactal feeds like water or herbal concoctions are often introduced due to traditions like purifying the infant's digestive system. Socioeconomic factors compound these issues. Mothers with low education or income face reduced exclusive breastfeeding rates, as do working mothers lacking lactation support. Employment in informal sectors, limited maternity leave, and inadequate workplace facilities further disrupt breastfeeding. Successful initiatives demonstrate that context-specific, multi-level interventions can overcome these barriers. Policy shifts are equally vital. Enforcing the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, extending paid maternity leave, and mandating lactation rooms in workplaces creates enabling environments. With only 44% of African infants exclusively breastfed as of 2021, sustained investment in these approaches is essential to meet the World Health Organization's 2030 target of 70% and secure a healthier future for the continent's children. Stay tuned with the interview segment of Lens on Africa for more.
Now, thank you for staying with us on Lens on Africa. Joining us now to discuss breastfeeding and its benefits is Lilian Okafor. She's a seasoned senior communications officer at the civil society Scaling Up Nutrition in Nigeria. She has played a key role in developing and executing communication strategies that promote nutrition, advocacy, and public health awareness in Nigeria, and is committed to leveraging communication as a tool for positive change in Nigeria's nutrition landscape. Lilian, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so very much for having us. Thank you.
It's great to have you on the program. And might I say happy Breastfeeding Week to you.
Happy World Breastfeeding,
World Breastfeeding Week,
and
exactly.
to Nigerians out there.
All right, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So now let's, start with the basics. What exactly makes breast milk so beneficial for newborns?
Thank you so very much for that question. So basically, breast milk is the best start that any mother, that any father, that any family, that any country, can give their infants.
All right.
Breast milk has lots of benefits to the infants, to the mother, to the family, and to the country, at large.
Right.
Yeah, so there are lots of benefits. Breast milk has some short-term benefits for the babies and long-term benefits. It contains lots of antibodies that are very, very essential and key to fighting and warding off diseases at the stage of infancy. Breast milk also has lots of immunity building attributes in it. Some of the short-term benefits is that it has some antibodies, for instance, like immunoglobulin, that actually helps in preventing diarrhea and pneumonia in infancy. Right. Then it also helps to improve gut bacteria. At that stage, it is good for children to have great gut bacteria because it enables them to, have good digestive systems, and it also helps to improve, their immunity. Breastfeeding over time, and their lived and testimonies and testimonials that we can showcase for this has been linked to huge and great cognitive development. Breast milk and breastfeeding contributes effectively to ensuring that a child's intelligence quotient, it's very high. Yeah. So it helps in brain development. In fact, if you look at the brain of a child that is breastfed exclusively for the first 6 months of life, and look at the brain of another infant, that didn't get enough breast milk, you would see the difference. Really? Yes, you would. I wish we could show that kind of pictorial image so that you understand exactly what we're saying. Then also some of the long-term benefits for the child is that it helps to prevent the prevalence of some chronic conditions later in life. Chronic conditions like diabetes, certain kinds of cancers, and all that. Then it helps to prepare the child to become a well-informed, well-educated adult that would contribute effectively to the country's workforce, that would contribute to the country's gross domestic product. Of course, that if a child does well in school, the child is able to come up with good and great grades, the child is employable, the child is able to contribute effectively to the workforce, and in the long run, the child contributes effectively to the country's gross domestic product, more like giving the country that great push in terms of the economy. Right. That's for the child. All right. Then for
okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, you wanted to preempt that question, but let me just ask it. So beyond the child and the baby, are there health benefits for breastfeeding mothers? Are there health benefits that breastfeeding offers mothers, both postpartum and maybe potentially later in life?
Exactly, there are lots of benefits. So that's what we call the postpartum period, the period that comes after delivery and all of that. So what breastfeeding does is that it helps uterine contraction. So I wouldn't know, for mothers out there who've had babies, you will discover that most times when you're breastfeeding, you're having this kind of bites, okay? So that's your uterus contracting. So what breastfeeding does is that it helps the uterus to go back to its pre-pregnancy stage. Mothers keep, my stomach, my uterus. Breastfeeding is what will help you to achieve, that uterus going back. It will help to bring you back to shape. So that's one key benefit for mothers. It is also very, very essential. It helps to prevent certain kinds of cancers in women. Yes, studies have shown, yes, breast cancers and ovarian cancers. Breastfeeding helps too. So if you're able to breastfeed your child exclusively for the first 6 months of life without water, and then you continue breastfeeding up until 2 years of life with complementary feeding, so you would imagine what will happen, So it helps with that. And then breastfeeding saves us a lot of costs, and it's very convenient. So imagine as a mother, this infant formulas, runs into tens of thousands or more, and you need to follow the measurements, and all of that. So some persons that give infant formula, when you go to the stores, you're seeing the heaps of cans. That's lots of money with the current state of the economy. So, but breast milk is something that God has given to us free. All you need to do is, ensure that you're well fed, you're in the right state of mind, you're well hydrated, and then the child is getting something at no cost. That would cost you nothing. Then it's also very, very convenient. So if you're going to go for breast milk substitutes rather than breastfeeding, so imagine the cost of getting the feeding utensils, you have to get the sterilizing equipment, the cost of power to boil hot water, and then you're moving your baby bag and all of that from one location to other. So there are lots of benefits, for the mother. And then also as well for the mother, it helps to reduce I talked about the risk of certain kinds of diseases, and I forgot to mention that for the baby it is linked to high vaccine efficacy. So a child that is well breastfed will respond effectively. The vaccines will work well, at the time the child. Yes, it does. There are studies to prove this. If we had the time, we'll really delve into this. Yeah. So it helps with ensuring that the body receives these vaccines that our babies take and that it works effectively, compared to when, a child is not well breastfed. The child might not respond effectively to vaccines. Yes.
All right. So now you've talked about, the first 6 months of life, and even the World Health Organization recommends that, babies are exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life. So why is this period, so important?
Okay. So that's what they call the first 1,000 days of life. That is the stage from the first day of conception up until when the child is 2 years of age. If you calculate that, that's like the first 1,000 days of life. So, and the first 6 months of life, after the child comes, is very, very critical, because that's the stage where, brain development, in fact, the first 2 years is very important, because that's the stage where brain development, all that the baby needs, to ensure that they develop optimally, cognitive-wise, health-wise, physically, and all around that are established. So this stage is very, very important, because if you do not get nutrition right, your child is going to come down with malnutrition. Now there is one form of malnutrition that is very, very critical, that affects the child's cognition, and that is called stunting. And why this kind of malnutrition is very critical is because it is irreversible. Some other forms of malnutrition can be reversed with medications, with adequate complementary feeding and all of that. But for this kind of malnutrition, it is irreversible. So it is like where you squeeze this paper, and then when you try to stretch out, even if you use your iron, you can't get it to its state. And that is when a child is too short for age. That is called stunting. So, and the too short for age is not dwarfism. It's not looking at a child and then you're feeling that, oh, this child is not that. It goes beyond the physical. That's the cognition that we're talking about. It affects the child's cognition. So this period of life, 1 to 2 years, is sometimes even children get malnourished, from the womb, because a malnourished mother would definitely conceive. The body is not well prepared to give that baby in the womb the kind of nutrients that the baby requires to develop optimally, and all of this is a whole lot, and mothers and parents really need to understand this. So that's stunting, ensuring that the mother's body is well prepared. There's what we call the multiple micronutrient supplements, that nutrition actors are pushing for. It is something that the government needs to look into, that we need to subsidize and ensure that, every pregnant mother gets this, even down to primary health care facilities. So simply put, what as your, what do you call them? Some of those, I've forgotten what they are called, some of these supplements that we take during pregnancy. Exactly. Okay, exactly. So, but there is this that has 15 nutrients that gives the mother and the baby what they require to carry a child to full term without any issues. And then the child comes out well, and then the mother has to start breastfeeding exclusively and then follow up with adequate complementary feeding. Right. So, stunting cannot be averted after 2 years of life. So, and that's why we're saying that breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life is very, very important, you know, for mothers, for families, for countries to, you know, to not get their children stunted, because stunting is an indicator of national development. So because it is tied to human capital development, and human capital development has some components in it. The health component is there, the educational attainment is there, which is, you know, connected to this cognition that we are talking about. So when that child is too short for age, it's not just that, oh, this child is supposed to be, the body mass index is supposed to be at this, and the child, no, it also affects the cognition. And once that is affected, after 2 years, there is nothing that can be done to reverse it.
Oh, wow. All right, that's very interesting. Now, how exactly does breast milk, you know, provide this unique, you know, things? Because there have been infant formulas that, you know, have been touted to mimic breast milk, and they contain all that good stuff. What exactly is going on here? How please explain that for me.
Okay, so infant formula might attempt to mimic breast milk, if I might use your words, but it can never be breast milk. So infant breast milk, like I mentioned earlier, has lots of antibodies. Yeah. So I want to give an instance. There is something that is called the colostrum. The colostrum is the first milk, you know, that comes within the first few days after birth. It is like the most important milk for the baby. It is yellowish. Some cultures say it's dirty. They discard it. Some cultures express. Some cultures say, oh, so just allow it to keep flowing out. But unfortunately, that is like the most important milk, you know, for the child. You can't find colostrum in infant formula. I'm just trying to give you an instance. So, and it's been said to be, you know, the first vaccine for the child. It's that breast milk that actually prepared. You know, when the child comes forth in the environment, the air, even here where we are, is infested. So that first milk that flows, it flows for the first few days, you know, after you put to bed, is what builds up and prepares the body of that child, you know, gives out lots of antibodies and all of that to fight and ward off, you know, infection. Then this colostrum also contains lactoferrin, leukocytes that fight pathogens directly. So breast milk, you know, we're different, okay? So the way the breast is, like, it functions specifically to the psychological, physiological needs of a specific child.
Right.
Depending on, I don't know how to explain this, you know, DNAs, hormonal, whatever, it's coming directly, prepared and fit for that specific child that came from the mother. But you can't establish that with infant formula. Infant formula has its static, you know, so you're not even sure if this is what this child needs. I don't know if you understand what we're saying. So, and this year's theme of the World Breastfeeding Week says, you know, prioritize breastfeeding, you know, creates sustainable systems. Sustainable systems. What's happening with climate? Climate change is a serious issue. You know, back then we used to think that, oh, it's not for us in Nigeria, it's not for us in Africa. But you can see what's happening with our weather. And infant formula, okay, exacerbates climate issues. So you have our industries producing all of this, the carbon emissions, all of those are contributing to the climate issues. So we are saying that we need to promote breastfeeding to fight the climate issues, because infant formula, you know, continues to worsen the challenge of, you know, climate issues.
All right. Now, you know, speaking of cultural beliefs and norms that influence breastfeeding practices, what is the role of education, you know, for mothers, families, especially in rural areas, rural and underserved areas? What is the role, what is the place of education, or how can, you know, these rural women, you know, come to accept, you know, breastfeeding? How do they understand and, you know, begin to practice it with the cultural beliefs that exist?
Okay, so the role of education, okay, cannot be overemphasized. It's very important.
How about
Nutrition.
they who are not educated?
So that's will come there,
Yeah.
okay? Nutrition sensitization, nutrition education, it is very, very important. So I don't want to bore us with the cultural beliefs and norms, you know. We know all of them, you know. The pressure from parents-in-laws, from mother-in-laws. Oh, the weather is hot. Give this baby water. Yes. There are lots of, you know, you're called names and all that. Women are under a lot of pressure, you know. Education is important. So now for the rural communities, okay, it is important to adapt education and sensitization in a way that suits and fits their culture. So I go to a rural community and I'm talking about colostrum and I'm speaking technical jargon. They cannot relate. So why not pass on this information to them in their local languages? You know, you speak in Hausa, get these healthcare providers, these nutritionists, to engage with them in their local languages. Have you got testimonials? Do we have testimonials from women who have breastfed exclusively within the same communities and their children are doing well? Would it be highly placed, you know, women from those communities, you know, bring together, come up with, you know, mother-to-mother support group within the community, within the locality, you know, and then have some of this, you know, women whom breastfeeding has worked effectively well for, you know, to engage these women in the communities. You'll be shocked to see the results. You'll be shocked to see the power of oral, you know, communication with regards to these communities. Pay advocates at CS-SUNN, you know, we do this a lot with our state chapters. We are in 30 plus states and the FCT, you know, working to ensure that every Nigerian has food and is nutrition secure. So at that state level, we do lots of advocacies, community sensitizations to traditional leaders. So when you get the buy-in of the community and religious leaders, you have won the community. Because these are like influencers in the community. They listen to them. So imagine visiting a traditional leader and then talking about this and getting them convinced. And first thing the following morning, the oral or the town choir is moving around from, you know, one place to the other, talking about breastfeeding in this local language. And you think that those women, you know, would not embrace. And it is also very, very important, the place of antenatal care. Antenatal care during pregnancy, you know, it's very, very important. This is where we need to do a lot to ensure that these women visit the health facilities when, you know, they are pregnant or when they are expectant. Because at the ANC visits, you get lots of information, you get lots of education, lots of sensitization around breastfeeding. Some people do not even know that they need to prepare their breasts before the baby comes. Some people do not know that, you know, maybe towards your second trimester, at the end of your second trimester, you're supposed to start cleaning out your nipples, so that the blocked pores and all of that, you know, would open up before the baby comes. So the baby comes and women are screaming, oh, my breast milk is not flowing. You know, there's what we call early initiation. That baby must be put to breast 1 hour after birth. If you don't do that, it comes with lots of complications. The breast milk will not flow because the baby comes out and is supposed to just have this kind of bonding and direct contact with the mother, you know, so that the hormones and everything continues to connect, and then the baby goes to the breast and then it triggers and then the milk starts flowing. But you see in some of our health facilities, babies come and they are kept somewhere else, separated from the mother for hours, and then when it's eventually time to breastfeed, they start suckling. And then the meats are like, oh, let her take coconut water. Give her this. What is happening? We run around. So these things are, you know, there are simple rules to them. And the World Health Organization has set out standards, has given us, you know, what we need to do to ensure that breastfeeding works well.
Right. Now, while the benefits of breastfeeding are well established, how can we communicate this, this information effectively without, you know, creating undue pressure or guilt for mothers, especially who cannot or who choose not to breastfeed? Because there are some people who, like you said, the milk doesn't come in. Some people, you know, it comes in and somewhere down the line, they're not producing enough. So how can we, you know, as important as this message is, how can we communicate it without, you know, sending a certain type of message to some people who may not be able to?
Okay, so you would agree with me and everyone out there that is listening, carrying a child for 9 months and birthing the child, bringing forth and all of that, it takes a whole lot, okay? It takes a lot of toll on the mother, on the family, and even the baby that is coming into, the world and all of that. So we need not be judgmental. We can't be judgmental with those women. I've had babies, different babies with their different peculiarities. It is a whole lot. So we need to even begin by appreciating those mothers. It is not easy, to be pregnant for 9 months and then to bring forth. We can't be judgmental because it takes a whole lot.
Right.
And the different pregnancies with their different peculiarities, yes, like I mentioned earlier. So as we try to get them, to encourage them to breastfeed, it is important to not judge them. Some mothers are working mothers and there are no support systems, to ensure that they are even able to breastfeed exclusively for 6 months. Do we judge them? No. Would we say that because you are going to be a mother that you leave your career? Can both not go side by side? So we cannot judge the working mothers. And for some mothers, cultural norms, beliefs, no support from spouses, no support from parents-in-laws, this would not enable them have the emotional and psychological balance to breastfeed. Are we going to judge those women? It takes a lot to be able to breastfeed. So what we have to do with this kind of situation is that as we encourage them to breastfeed, we need to ensure that we have all the support systems in place that would enable them to breastfeed their babies. Support from spouses, from grandparents, from every sector. And okay, so then
our time is fast spent, but I'll just ask you very briefly, make this as brief as possible. What are the potential public health and economic benefits for communities and healthcare systems, when breastfeeding increases?
Awesome. So there are lots of benefits.
Briefly.
Yeah. So the World Bank has said that for countries that are able to invest $1 in nutrition, of course, the breastfeeding is part of nutrition, that they would gain or yield $23 in returns. So what does that tell you? So you're imputing 100,000 into something and it is yielding you $23 alongside all of these benefits that I talked about earlier. So it also helps us to cut costs on our health systems. So we are not, as a country, spending money on establishing CMAM centers where we are managing children with acute malnutrition. Our health indices are not negative. They are not showing that, oh, Nigeria is having high, rates of stunting. We are not spending monies, on the health systems to begin to address the challenges that comes with malnutrition. So there are lots of benefits around this.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Time, there's so much to talk about, but time will not permit us.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you. I've been speaking with Lilian Okafor, Senior Communications Officer, Civil Society Scaling Up Nutrition in Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights on this valuable topic.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. From boosting immunity to building emotional bonds, breastfeeding is more than nourishment. It is nature's first act of love and protection. We hope that this conversation has empowered everyone to see the beauty, strength, and science behind breastfeeding, as well as the importance of supporting it in every way possible. Remember, informed choices lead to healthier futures.